And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to The Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flippity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's huge.
Let's go.
Welcome and thanks for listening to The Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. I'm Jeff Morey and I'm your host. This week, I figured I would dive back into the prepping world and talk about some of the items, products, and skills that would absolutely be game changers in the event of a true SHTF situation. I will outline my top 10 things that I think will give you a distinct edge in a world gone mad in many different ways. As preppers, of course, we all hope that we never have to fully utilize both our preps and our skills. I'm perfectly fine with being known as the crazy prepper guy or that overly paranoid neighbor. Some call us crazy, some call us conspiracy theorists, but one thing is for sure. In a true SHTF situation, we won't be so crazy anymore, and we will be the ones everyone is looking to for help. It is for this reason that I always recommend never disclosing the full extent of your preps to anyone, unless they are part of your prepping community or family that you can trust. No matter how big my show ever gets, one thing is for sure. I will never share all my preps and pictures of my house and my property. Just know this, I'm a proud 2A supporter and FAFO. I'm sure most all of you know what that acronym stands for. But enough about that. Let's talk about what's going on around the country and around the world this week before we dive into my top 10 game-changing preps. In New York City this week, socialist and radical Islamist Zohran Mamdani defeated former New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary for New York City mayor in what people are calling one of the most stunning upsets in modern New York City history. You may remember Andrew Cuomo. He was the governor of New York from 2011 to 2021, when he resigned following allegations of sexual misconduct. He also signed legislation to legalize same-sex marriage and the New York SAFE Act of 2013, which was at the time the strictest gun control law in the United States. He was pretty much universally hated by Republicans at the time, but believe me when I tell you, Cuomo is a choir boy compared to Mamdani. New York City is one of the most liberal cities in the country, so usually the Democratic primary more or less determines who will become mayor of the city. Mamdani will, I have no doubt, become the worst mayor in the history of New York City. To make things worse, Democratic firebrands AOC and Bernie Sanders even endorsed him. I pray for you and for your future, New York City. Well, from awful news to great news. On Wednesday, food giant Nestle said it plans to completely eliminate artificial colors from its U.S. food and beverages by the middle of 2026. This comes after Heinz and General Mills both said they would also remove artificial dyes from their U.S. products by 2027 last week. This is a major win, people. I used to never give artificial food ingredients a second thought, but my wife is big into natural and holistic foods and products, and between her research and my research doing this show, I've really been red-pilled in the last few years about the food and food industry in general. I had planned on doing a show on this exact subject sometime, but since Trump took office and RFK Jr. became our Health and Human Services Secretary, there have been so many positive things to come from this that I hope this is something I won't even have to address, and that our leaders and more specifically our food suppliers will come around and do the right thing for our citizens and consumers from now on. The whole artificial food ingredient thing has always been a coordinated effort with Big Pharma to keep Americans sick and dependent on drugs. And I truly believe it's linked to clandestine efforts to depopulate and sterilize the population as well. Sorry to get all conspiracy theorists on you on a prepping show, but if you don't believe me, do your own research. Trust me, you won't have to go too far down that rabbit hole before you will find things that will make you a believer. In the continued Israel-Iran U.S. airstrike saga, we're still uncertain as to the exact level of damage done to Iran's nuclear facilities, and more importantly, program. As President Trump and the White House are claiming that Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated, while conflicting reports have claimed that the strike may have only set the program back by months. All we know for sure is that the strikes were indeed carried out and that no U.S. servicemen were killed or injured. According to Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, 12 of the 14 massive ordnance penetrators were used in the attack on the nuclear development site at Fordo. And Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, not to be confused with Dean Kane, described in great detail on Thursday more about the attack, the ordnance used, and the mission in general. The latest reports indicate that Iran remains defiant that they will not change their position on their nuclear program, and that despite reports that have not reached an agreement to return to negotiations with the U.S. It remains to be seen in the next few weeks if Israel or the U.S. will initiate any further attacks on Iran, and if the fragile ceasefire will hold. Lots of big rulings from the Supreme Court on Friday. To try to sum it up, first they voted to lift temporary blocks on President Trump's order that ended automatic birthright citizenship for the children of parents who were in the U.S. either illegally or temporarily without authorization. They chose to not address whether or not the order was indeed constitutional, but instead ruled on the legality of whether district judges could file injunctions to attempt to block it. Another ruling upheld a current Texas law that requires age verification for pornographic websites, and another ruling denied a challenge to an Obamacare board that determines which preventative care must be covered by insurance companies. And then a huge win for Christians and conservatives. The court will allow parents to remove their elementary school children from classes where the books include gay characters. That is great news as we slowly try to wipe out the woke agenda that is permeated throughout our schools and education system. Big steps and big wins for the most part this week. All this work for the Supreme Court does not come without drama, though, as Trump-appointed Justice Amy Coney Barrett has some choice words to describe liberal justice and Biden DEI appointee Ketanji Jackson, saying that Jackson was embracing imperial judiciary while writing in her Supreme Court opinion. Speaking to Jackson's dissent on the court's decision on nationwide injunctions, she also said, quote, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself." Well, at least Baird is standing up for what's right finally, after frequently siding with the left on many decisions, and especially joining with 3 liberal members of the Supreme Court in dissenting from a majority decision that allowed the Trump administration to continue deporting members of the Tren de Aragua gang. I think for most conservatives, she definitely isn't what we had hoped she would be. And if anyone actually cares, the world's second richest man, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, wed his longtime girlfriend Lauren Sanchez this week in an extravagant ceremony in Venice, Italy. The private ceremony was reportedly held on a secluded island, and only 200 people were present for the ceremony itself, 70 of which were family. But that didn't stop a great deal of the world's rich and famous from showing up, including Leonardo DiCaprio, most of the Kardashians, Bill Gates, Orlando Bloom, Sydney Sweeney, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, Oprah Winfrey, among many, many others. I really don't care personally, but I figured maybe there were some of you that would, or would at least be interested. All right, I think that covers all the important, relevant stuff in the news. Let's talk about 10 game-changing preps. In this show, I will talk about preps for defense and surveillance, medical, food and water, power, and more. So I don't know that I can put these in a particular order, since thankfully I've never had to utilize all of them. And we also don't know if in a true SHTF situation, what, be it disaster, war, pandemic, earthquake, famine, EMP attack on the grid, what scenario we are trying to survive. And if we're looking at surviving long-term or short-term as well. Some of these may hold more value based on the situation. So keep that in mind. That being said, surveillance and security is always a top priority for me personally. And if you're in a situation where you're either locked down, sheltering in place at home, or you've made it to your bug out location, being able to quickly and effectively surveil your surroundings will be a game changer. And how can you most easily do this without putting you or your family in harm's way? By not leaving your location and doing so remotely. And how might you accomplish this, you might ask? By utilizing a drone with a live video feed. Now, understand in some situations this may not be possible. Heavy smoke or fire, an EMP attack that's knocked out the grid and knocked out communication towers used for transmitting the video feed, etc., might impede or make it impossible to use the drone. But if you can, being able to remotely control a drone and take a look at potential invaders or threats will absolutely be a game changer. And the cost of drones has gone down significantly in recent years. Legally, you have to be certified to operate a real drone. I'm not talking about a kid's toy in U.S. airspace. But as I've said about ham radio, in the event of a true disaster, no one's going to care about or probably be available to enforce whether or not you're licensed or certified. Now, I'm not going to get into detail on which companies to check out or models of drones to look into. All I will say is buy one that is made in the USA. You've probably heard the theories of China possessing the ability to remotely shut down or even self-destruct all kinds of different Chinese-produced tech, such as cell phones, automobiles, and even equipment used to power electrical and nuclear facilities. Well, I can't say for certain whether or not this intel is true. What I can tell you is that I don't trust China as far as I can throw them. So I absolutely don't recommend using Chinese tech for any of your preps if you have a choice. All right, I just mentioned ham radio. That makes another one of my top 10 game-changing preps. I will freely admit this is not one of my areas of expertise. So I do what I do when I'm not an expert on something. I bring one in. Thankfully, I have a close family member who is a licensed ham radio operator and an expert. So he, of course, was kind enough to help me set up my ham radios and also get me set up on local repeaters. So for this particular prep, I would recommend you do the same. Decent ham radios are not expensive. I personally have Baofangs, which only run around $100, $120 for a pair of the good ones. Just make sure you get at least 8-watt models. But if you have the money, go ahead and get some real high-quality Motorola's or high-end radios. There are a couple of brands of ham radios that are not made in China, such as Stryker and Elecraft. Being able to communicate in the event of a crisis or disaster will definitely be a game changer. And pretty much every ham radio I have seen has built-in short-range walkie-talkie ability, as well as weather and police band radio, which will help you monitor police and fire movements as well. So get one for every member of your family or prepping circle. Next up on my list, and something I have talked about in detail before, yet I rarely see talked about by other prepping shows or so-called experts outside of those with military and tactical backgrounds, is night vision. And I'm just going to say night vision is a broad description because there are many different types of night vision and surveillance equipment. You have, of course, the tried and true military-style night vision goggles that are head-mounted, night vision monoculars, which are single-eyed devices for one-handed use, binoculars, cameras, and scopes and sights, as well as thermal imaging equipment such as FLIR. Digital night vision equipment is what you will generally find, and even lower priced units can greatly help improve vision and illuminate your surroundings at night or in very low light situations. Thermal equipment such as FLIR can pick up heat signatures as far as 500 meters or so for the consumer units that you and I can buy. And military applications such as the ones used on Apaches and Black Hawk helicopters can pick up heat signatures from miles away. So you're probably thinking to yourself two things right now. Number one, why in the world would you rank night vision equipment as a top 10 game-changing prep when there's so many other things that we would need in the event of a true disaster? And number two, there's no way I can afford to add night vision to my important preps. Well, many of you may say that anyway. Well, I'll answer both of them for you. First, in a world gone mad, being unseen and unheard may mean the difference between life and death, living and dying. If it really hits the fan, people will be hungry and angry. Gangs and violence will run amok through our streets and cities, and people will only be concerned about themselves and their immediate families. Now, I know this is something we don't want to have to think about or envision, but as preppers, we have to. In a world gone mad, the very best time to surveil our property, forage, and if necessary, take what we need to survive will be in the cover of darkness at night. You greatly increase your chance of survival just knowing that you probably won't be shot by a sniper from 500 yards away and will be very hard to spot making your rounds, foraging, or taking whatever you need to survive. Most people will be scared and sheltered in their homes or bunkers, awaiting sunrise before they start moving again. This is the perfect time for you to be out and about. Second, night vision has become way more affordable than it used to be, and you can get a decent night vision monocular for as low as around $80 or $100. Of course, if you want to be the top dog and you have the money, military-grade equipment can get into the tens of thousands of dollars and even as much as $100,000 or so. Could you imagine if you were a member of a local MAG group, which is a mutual assistance group in the preparedness world, and you have a joint compound you're operating out of, and your group has a FLIR thermal imager to help identify potential threats? How much of an asset would that be? And if every member of the group contributed to purchasing it, suddenly it can start to get more affordable. Of course, these are all hypothetical scenarios I'm throwing at you, but I'm sure there probably are MAG groups out there with capabilities such as this. I talked about the importance of surveillance with a drone and also with night vision. But having daytime ground level surveillance is important too. And one thing that any good prepper should have at their final location, being shelter in place at home or your bug out location, is a dirt bike. A dirt bike, you might ask? Yep, a dirt bike. There is no more versatile vehicle for quickly surveilling your property, or if necessary, mounting a tack or bugging out to the most inaccessible and remote locations than a dirt bike. They can traverse difficult terrain much more quickly and effectively than a truck, or even in some cases an ATV, and even slip into very tight alleyways or wooded areas that otherwise might not be accessible to any other vehicle. Yes, it does take a certain level of practice and skill to operate one effectively, but you can pick up a cheap used one on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, and they're a lot of fun to ride. You can even outfit one with a couple of bags and preps for even more versatility. Unfortunately, there are cons to having a dirt bike or dirt bikes as a prep. Those being maintenance, room, and a place to store them. And those of us with small children, obviously, there are challenges in that aspect as well. Children too old to ride in a mountable baby seat, but too young to possess the skill and size to operate one on their own, obviously being the big ones there. So for those reasons, dirt bikes are great preps for the lone wolf preppers or couples with no kids more than for the family. But regardless, having at least one in the family as a scout and surveillance vehicle in itself is a game changer. I do recommend getting one that is as basic as possible and that doesn't have a lot of electronic equipment in the event of an EMP attack. Speaking of skills, having certain skills will be a game changer in a SHTF situation. One of those is some basic medical skills. A great deal of us that have prepping shows or influencers in the prepping world have a background in emergency services or emergency management. While I don't have a lot of experience, I am both a former EMT and firefighter. And for me, it was the exact opposite of most of the big preppers. My prepping passion actually encouraged and inspired me to become an EMT and firefighter. So if you have the time, I encourage you to do the same. Volunteering at your local volunteer fire department will be a phenomenal way for you to not only learn and use some of these skills, but it will oftentimes connect you with other preparedness-minded people. If your community does not have a MAG group, this is a great place to meet people and even form your own MAG. Oftentimes, being a good standing active member of a local VFD, you may even have the opportunity to get free training from the fire department or EMS or a preparedness course. That's actually how I became an EMT. I was a very active member of the local volunteer fire department, and they actually offered 100% paid training and even brought in a state certified instructor to teach an EMS course. After completing the course, I was then able to go ahead and take the state written and skills exam and obtain my state EMT basic certification. Even if you don't have the time or desire to take it that far, just being Red Cross first aid certified and knowing some of the basics to emergency first aid will be a huge plus in the event of a true SHTF situation. The next potential game changer is having a good portable refrigerator. There are a lot of different brands, sizes, and types out there that operate on different power sources. One of the best out there is a DC refrigerator called the Set Power. The Set Power refrigerator only takes about 30 to 50 watts to use, and it's set up like a Coleman type cooler, so you can use it both in your home or throw it in your car and plug it into your cigarette lighter. So whether you're sheltering in place or bugging out, it can work in either scenario. As preppers, we always want to prepare for every scenario. So having a little mini fridge at home that you have designated as your survival fridge isn't going to help you if you do have to, for some reason, leave your home. Besides, having a portable DC fridge like this is great because you can take it camping, to the lake, whatever you need it for when you need to get up and go. Now, note here, it's not going to hold a lot of cold items, but you lose some of the space in exchange for convenience. But I think the versatility factor more than makes up for that. All right, we can't have a list of game-changing preps without stating the obvious, right? I think literally everyone knows that having a good generator is an absolute game changer in any disaster or SHTF scenario. The question here is, number one, what is your budget? And number two, what do you plan on using it to power? Now, I know some folks that went ahead and spent the money and went all in on a whole home generator. And that's great. Having a whole home generator wired is an insanely convenient. When the power goes out, it automatically turns on within seconds. There are two problems with this for me personally. Number one is obviously the cost. I just don't have $8,000 to pay and have a whole home generator installed. And yes, you may be able to get one for a little less than that, but I think you're talking at least minimum $5,000 at the absolute least. And depending obviously on how big your house is and how much power you need, you may quickly be getting up in the $10,000 to $15,000 range or more. The other problem I have with this is that if you have an earthquake, a tree were to fall on the generator, or even worse, your house, in the event of a fire, etc., where the generator is irreparably damaged or you can't stay in your home, then that $5,000 to $15,000 you spend on a whole home generator is a total waste. So I prefer a portable generator and having a transfer switch installed outside in my fuse panel. It's cheaper and it gives me the versatility of being able to use that generator for my home or putting it in the bed of my truck and taking it with me somewhere. Just remember the weight of the generator, especially if you have a big 10,500 watt dual fuel unit like mine, and plan accordingly. When I say that, I don't mean expect that your wife, kids, or neighbor will be there and available to help you load it in the back of your truck. Build or buy some ramps that you can wheel it into your truck bed on your own and practice doing it to be sure you can actually do it by yourself. Also, have ratchet straps or some kind of tie down sitting either on top of it or easily accessible by it so you don't have to go looking for them when you need them. For those of you that for sure plan on bugging out, a much smaller inverter generator is the way to go. They're quiet and you can even hand carry them, many of them easily. Me personally, I like to have both. Keep the big boy in your garage or close to where your transfer switch is, and keep your little inverter in your car. That way, if you have to bug out in a hurry and you have to leave behind your big generator, you still have your portable power ready to go. But either way, make sure you get a dual fuel or even tri-fuel unit, please. You just can't be sure that you will either have gas, propane, or especially natural gas. So be prepared and be versatile. Speaking of fuel and power sources, another prep that could easily have made the list, but I will group here with your power source, is a good solar panel. Generators will eventually run out of fuel, but solar power will provide you with sustainable energy to help power small electronics and things that need to be recharged that are too small and don't draw enough power to warrant using a generator. So grab a good solar panel and pair it with your generator for an awesome 1-2 punch of power when you need it the most. Next up on my list, we will address cooking. I thought about putting a portable camp stove in this spot, and that could still easily be a good pick, but what is one of the number one things that a committed prepper has to consider when it comes to extended survival, and especially your food and water supplies? Possibly the most important word in a prepper's vocabulary: sustainability. And while having a good camp stove and lots of extra propane on hand is still a fantastic idea, eventually that fuel supply is going to run out. So how can a prepper address this? By harnessing sustainable energy directly from the sun. There is a product manufactured by Sun Ovens International called the Sun Oven that uses only solar energy that allows you to cook, bake, dehydrate, or broil, and can reach temperatures of up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. It's made in America, which is part of why it is the number one product I recommend, and it's very durable and will last for years. Now, the one catch to the Sun Oven is price. It's listed on their website for $749. Now, that's a little pricey, but keep in mind how long it will last, and you will never have to buy any kind of fuel for it. There are other much less expensive products to consider as well. My Patriot Supply has an off-grid biomass oven that's only $149. It accepts basically any flammable material. There's a company called GoSun that has hybrid solar ovens that use solar power during the day and run off 12-volt electricity at night. They start at only $99 for a very small unit. For some, that might be a better option. The cool thing about the GoSun, too, is that you will have the option to cook at night without putting out smoke or flames that could attract would-be invaders as well. So as long as you can contain the smell as much as possible. Staying with the sustainability theme in food and cooking, next up on my list is a sustainable food source that has become insanely popular with preppers these days. Having chickens is one of the cheapest and easiest ways to provide your family with a renewable, sustainable, healthy food source that will help greatly extend your food storage as well. Now, let's be real here. Unless you live on a farm and have hundreds of chickens, they're never going to lay enough eggs to provide you with enough food on their own. But even just having just a few chickens can help supplement your food storage, and if necessary, be killed and butchered to eat the birds themselves. People that have never had chickens are probably thinking to themselves, man, that's probably going to be expensive and they're going to be very hard to care for. Well, if that's what you think, you're wrong on both counts. Without spending an hour going into different breeds and pros and cons of each, there are many species that are very docile, good egg layers, that don't require heaters or special care. If you're interested in adding chickens to your preps, my suggestion to you would be to join some Facebook groups that are for breeders and survivalists, as they can help answer your questions and give you good advice. Your local ag supply store, or most anywhere you can buy them, can usually help too. All right, we made it to the end of my list. And I will say, I did save the most important one for last. What one thing does every living thing on this planet need to survive? You shouldn't have to be a Jeopardy master to answer this one. If you said water, congratulations, you're correct. And I think this is the one resource that even good seasoned preppers tend to overlook and just assume because 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, and that just because you have a few life straws in your preps that you can find and survive with some stored gallons of water and some life straws and water purification tablets. I think that's a bad assumption, that you have to assume the worst always. And for example, in the event of some kind of nuclear or biological attack, that much of the water supply may be contaminated. So for reasons such as this and more, I think you need to have a large supply of clean water available at all times. And what better way to do that than to harness it from the sky in the form of a rainwater collection system? Now, there are lots of different types and setups of rainwater collection or harvesting systems, ranging from a simple rain barrel at the end of a gutter downspout to a $15,000 wet collection system that utilizes multiple downspouts from different gutters, that runs the pipes underground and then to vertical pipes that empty into large tanks separate from your house. Obviously, this is the kind of thing that's much easier to visualize and talk about on an audio podcast. But stay tuned to my YouTube channel. I plan on doing a demonstration in the future on a good mid-level rainwater collection system. There are a lot of items, skills, etc., that could have made this list. I could easily tailor a list to you personally if I knew your situation, your budget, where you live, and your existing preps. But this is what I came up with. I think with this list of preps pretty much applies to everyone, and not only could be, but will be, game changers in the event of a true SHTF situation. So I challenge you right now to put some thought into budgeting and planning to add these preps to your existing ones, and you will exponentially increase your chances of survival in the event of a world-changing disaster. If you haven't already, please look up my YouTube channel and like and subscribe to it. You can find every episode of my show, and you can find a video teaser of me in the studio as well. There's actual video how-tos, tips, tricks, and product reviews all coming soon. I appreciate you listening. Please check out my channel and also all my other social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, or you can email me at thepppodcast@yahoo.com. Thanks as always for listening, and see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.